We're down here on page 230 on the PDF or page 211 on the physical copy. Mandate of the St. Petersburg workers to their labor deputy. And in classic communist fashion, our title has a footnote. Mandate of the St. Petersburg workers to their labor deputy was written at the beginning of October 1912. It was unanimously adopted at meetings of workers in the largest plants in St. Petersburg, and at the Assembly of Workers' Voters Delegates held on October 17, 1912. J.V. Stalin directed the discussion of the mandate at impromptu meetings in the factories. V.I. Lenin attached exceptional importance to the mandate. On sending it to the printers for publication in Social Democrat, he wrote on the margin, quote, "Return without fail, keep clean, highly important to preserve this document," unquote. The mandate was published in Social Democrat numbers 28 and 29, November 5th, 1912. In a letter to the editorial board of Pravda, Lenin wrote, "You must publish this mandate to the St. Petersburg deputy without fail, in a prominent place, in large type." See V.I. Lenin Works, 4th Russian edition, volume 35, page 38. On this planet, y'all. Thank you, NTC, for ending Ree's torment. Appreciate that. The demands of the Russian people that were advanced by the movement of 1905 have remained unfulfilled. The development of the reaction and of the renovated system did not merely leave these demands unsatisfied, it made them still more imperative. The workers often lack the possibility not only of going on strike, because there is no guarantee that they will not be shot down for doing so. Not only of organizing unions and holding meetings, because there is no guarantee that they will not be arrested for doing so. But even taking part in the Duma elections, because if they do so, they will be interpreted or deported all the same. Were not the workers at Putilov Works and the Neva shipbuilding yard interpreted the other day? The term interpretation appeared in connection with the ruling Senate's interpretation of the electoral laws in a sense favorable for the government. In interpreting the laws, the authorities arbitrarily annulled elections. That is apart from the tens of millions of starving peasants who have been put at the mercy of the landlords and the Zemstvo officials. All this points to the necessity of satisfying the demands of 1905. At the state of economic life in Russia, the already visible signs of the coming industrial crisis, and the steadily growing pauperization of a broad strata of the peasantry are making the fulfillment of the tasks of 1905 imperative. Hence, we think that Russia is on the eve of an impending mass movement, which will perhaps be more profound than that of 1905. That is proved by Lena actions, by the protest strikes against interpretations, etc. As in 1905, in the van of these movements will be the most advanced class in Russian society, the Russian proletariat. Its only ally can be the much suffering peasantry, which is vitally interested in the emancipation of Russia. A fight on two fronts, against the feudal bureaucratic order of things and against the liberal bourgeoisie, who are seeking an alliance with the old regime. That is the form the coming actions of the people must assume. And that struggle will be victorious only to the extent that the working class comes out at the head of the popular movement. But in order that the working class may honorably fulfill its role as the leader of the popular movement, it must be equipped with consciousness of its interests and a high degree of organization. Under the present conditions, the floor of the Duma is one of the best means of enlightening and organizing the broad masses of the proletariat. It is precisely for this reason that we are sending our deputy to the Duma and instructing him and the entire Social Democratic group in the Fourth Duma widely to proclaim our demands from the floor of the Duma and not to indulge in the futile game of legislating in the Duma of the gentry. We would like the Social Democratic group in the Fourth Duma, and our deputy in particular, to hold high the banner of the working class in the hostile camp of the Black Duma. We would like to hear from the floor of the Duma the voices of the members of the Social Democratic group loudly proclaiming the ultimate aim of the proletariat. The full and uncurtailed demands of 1905, proclaiming the Russian working class as the leader of the popular movement, the peasantry of his most reliable ally of the working class, and the liberal bourgeoisie as the betrayer of the popular freedom. We would like the Social Democratic group in the Fourth Duma to be united and solid in its activities on the basis of the above-mentioned slogans. We would like it to obtain its strength from the permanent contact with the broad masses. We would like to march in step with the political organization of the working class of Russia. First published in leaflet form in the first half of October 1912. I'm going to have to see a lot of Stalins in chat to continue on. There's secret ones. There's secret Stalin emotes, which you can see chat is indulging in. Oh my god, someone just got a Megazord. You can type Stalin heart. You type it like this. Small Stalin and then the big H. Like this. Stalin heart. And then that'll get you the Stalin heart emote. Alright, you convinced me. Yeah, big H. Not Dave's big H. Different big H. There's also this. You can also just type Stalin with his name cap locks and it gives you young Stalin. Or Stalin heart gives you this. We also have Kim High too. You can go Kim High like this, see? That's our other one. Kim High. You do capital K, capital H, Kim High. Yeah, I love the Kim High. That's one of my favorite ones. Yeah, and you can see all of those at Better T TV. That's where you can see all the ones I got active for our channel. There's a bunch of them. The will of the voters delegates. Yeah, there you go. I forgot I had Gulag. I forgot I had a Gulag one. There, we even got a Gulag emote. The will of the voters delegates. The results of the elections in the Workers' Curia have now been finally established. The first election of the electors at the Workers' Curia of St. Petersburg Gubernaria took place at the Gubernaria Assembly of the Voters' Delegates on October 5th, 1912. In spite of the fact that 21 of the largest plants in St. Petersburg had been deprived of the right to vote, among the 6 electors elected by the assembly, there were 4 Bolsheviks. As a result of the pressure of the masses, the right to vote of the workers in the interpreted plants was restored. On October 14, 1912, new elections of voters delegations took place at these plants. And on October 17th, the second assembly was held of voters' delegates from the Workers' Curia of the St. Petersburg Gubernia. At this assembly, the second election of electors took place, and 5 candidates polled an absolute majority, 2 Bolsheviks and 3 Mensheviks. Next day, a supplementary poll was taken to elect a 6th elector, and a Bolshevik was elected. The course of the election struggle is described in detail in J.V. Stalin's correspondence to Social Democrat entitled The Elections in St. Petersburg, pages 279 to 292 of this volume. Alright. So, the results of the elections of Workers' Curia have now been finally established. Of the 6 electors, 3 are liquidators, 3 supporters of Pravda. Which one of them should be nominated for the Duma? Which one of them, indeed, ought to be nominated? Did the Assembly of Voters' Delegates give any instructions on this matter? The liquidators got their supported electors because they concealed their views from the voters' delegates. They glossed over disagreements and played at unity. They were supported by the non-party voters' delegates, who disliked disagreements and who accepted the word of the liquidators. But in spite of all the liquidators' efforts to confuse the issue, in one thing, and the main thing at that, the will of the voters' delegates made itself felt. This was on the question of the mandate. By an overwhelming majority, the Assembly of Voters' Delegates adopted a definite mandate to the Duma deputy, the mandate of the supporters of Pravda. In its report to the elections, Luch hushes up the point. But it cannot conceal from its readers the truth, which is known to all the voters' delegates. We shall not permit it to misrepresent the will of the voters' delegates. And Luch, the Ray, is a legal daily newspaper published in St. Petersburg by Menshevik liquidators from September 1912 to July 1913. In the columns of the Luch, the liquidators openly attacked the underground party. The newspaper was run with aid of funds obtained mainly from the bourgeoisie. So, getting that sweet big bourgeoisie funding. And if you don't remember what the liquidators were a group in the Communist Party and the Social Democratic Party that thought that they should do away with all illegal organizations and all ties to them. This was a line that, of course, Stalin was against, being that he was part of the group that was helping to, procure arms for Muslim radical groups and other workers' struggles. So, in its report of the elections, Luch hushes up this point. But it cannot conceal from its readers the truth, which is known to all the voters' delegates. We shall not permit it to misrepresent the will of the voters' delegates. That's because you can't behave, see, Ray? Okay, you have fun with your family, comrade. The mandate is an instruction to the deputy. The mandate molds the deputy. The deputy is the image of the mandate. What does the mandate proposed by the big plants in St. Petersburg and adopted by the Assembly of Voters' Delegates speak of? First of all, the mandate speaks of the tasks of 1905 and says that those tasks have not yet been fulfilled. That the economic and political situation in the country makes the fulfillment of these tasks inevitable. According to the mandate, the emancipation of the country can be achieved only by a struggle. A struggle on two fronts, against the feudal bureaucratic survivals on the one hand, and against the treacherous liberal bourgeoisie on the other. In this, the peasantry alone can be the reliable ally of the workers. But the struggle can be victorious only on the condition that hegemony, the leading role, is exercised by the proletariat. The more class conscious and organized the workers are, the better they will fulfill the role of leader of the people. In view of the fact that under present conditions, the floor of the Duma is one of the best means of organizing and enlightening the masses, the workers are sending their deputy to the Duma in order that he and the entire Social Democratic group in the Fourth Duma shall champion the fundamental tasks of the proletariat, the full and uncurtailed demands of the country. Notice how it's the Social Democratic Party putting up these delegates, not championing delegates who were actually for one of the bourgeois parties. Notice how they're not championing for this or that cadet candidate, but instead they're talking about putting a candidate attached to their own party in whatever bourgeois electoral bodies they can get into. That's the fundamental difference between the Marxist-Leninist program and the Social Democratic program of today. Because remember that Social Democrat in this work, of course, is synonymous with Marxism-Leninism. Soon we are going to witness a split with the Social Democrats and the Bolsheviks. But right now, the Social Democrats and the Bolsheviks, the Marxists, they're all one group. It's the outbreak of the Imperial War that first reveals this split between them. Such is the content of the mandate. It is not difficult to perceive that this mandate differs fundamentally from the platform of the liquidators. It is entirely anti-liquidationist. The question then arises, if the liquidators, after all, fail to nominate their candidate for Duma deputy, what is to happen to the mandate, which the Duma deputy is in duty bound to carry out? Since the Assembly of Voters' Delegates passed a definite decision to that effect. An anti-liquidationist mandate carried out by a liquidator. Will our liquidators sink to such a disgrace? Do they realize that playing at unity has driven them into impasse? Or perhaps they intend to violate the mandate, to regulate it to oblivion. But in that case, what about the will of the voters' delegates, which the workers of St. Petersburg will undoubtedly come out to defend? Will the liquidators dare to trample upon the will of the voters' delegates? They're still talking about victory. But do they realize that the mandate has inflicted mortal defeat upon them by emphasizing that only an anti-liquidator can be a Duma deputy? Pravda, number 147. October 1912. Reprinted from the newspaper. Signed, K. Sit. K. Sit. K. Saint. KST. You know, our boy KST. Hey, KST! Hand me that tobacco over there. I gotta fill up my pipe. K Street. Written by old K Street. Yeah.
In my car that will change your whole way of thinking.
Yo, NTC, thank you muchly for subscribing. I'm not sure why I said it that way, but that's the way I said it. And look at that. Someone has got an OG. Look at that. An OG skibbity. Oi, I can stop pushing. is what Hitler is saying as Stalin is ramming him into the toilet. Wow, that's a good one to get. That's a good one to get. All right. I think we could do one more, but I gotta see enough Stalins in chat again.
Yeah.
Dare we read a third Stalin read today? I don't know. Can chat handle that? What do you think, chat? Can you handle a third Stalin read today? This will be a good one because this is now the results, actually. We're now talking about the results of the elections in the Workers' Curia of St. Petersburg. 1. The election of the voters' delegates. The most characteristic feature of the temper of the workers compared with 1907 is the great revival of interest in the elections.
What's it gonna be?
Drugs!
Huh?
I choose drugs!
Drugs! It is mandatory, that's true. Okay, as soon as I'm done reading this section, I will roll up a doobie and choose drugs. Thank you, Virgo. Allow me to read this short work first, because, otherwise I'll be hacking my lungs out while I try and read. The most characteristic feature of the temper of the workers compared with 1907 is the great revival of interest in the elections. If we leave out of account the small groups scattered here and there among the enterprises, we may boldly assert that the boycott mood is entirely absent. Don't worry, I'll make up for it with the one I'll roll up, Virgo. Obakov did not boycott the elections. It was deprived of the opportunity to take part in them by the workers' administration. And this refers to Upakov's works. The Neva shipbuilding yard was the only place where the boycotters acted in an organized manner. But even there, the overwhelming majority of the workers declared in favor of taking part in the elections. The broad masses of the workers were in favor of taking part in the elections. Moreover, they demanded elections and went to the polls with immense interest, as long as no unsurmountable obstacles were put in their way. This is proved by the recent mass protests against the interpretations. In almost every case, Social Democrats, or those associated with the Social Democrats, were elected. Owing to circumstances beyond our control, it was possible only in a few factories to expound fully the platform of consistent workers' democracy. The more so because the liquidators wisely hid their platform from the workers. But wherever such exposition was possible, the workers adopted the platform of the anti-liquidators in the form of a mandate. In these cases, the liquidators evidently, having no respect for themselves or for their own view, declared that, in substance, they too were in favor of such a mandate, Neva Shipbuilding Yard, and they moved amendments about freedom of association, which were rejected on the grounds that they were superfluous. Thus, the voters' delegates were elected mainly on their personal merits. The overwhelming majority of those elected proved to be Social Democrats, or people associated with them. Social democracy alone expresses the interests of the working class. That is what the election of the voters' delegates tells us. 2. The election of electors. Of 82 voters' delegates who assembled, 26 were definite anti-liquidators, 15 definite liquidators, while the remaining 41 were just Social Democrats, people associated with the Social Democrats and non party lefts. For whom would these 41 vote? What political line would they approve of? That was the question that primarily interested the factionalists. By an overwhelming majority, the Assembly of Voters' Delegates declared in favor of the mandate proposed by the supporters of Pravda. By so doing, it defined its complexion. The political line of the anti-liquidators triumphed. The attempt of the liquidators to prevent this failed. Had the liquidators been politically honest and respected their own views, they would have withdrawn their candidates and would have left all the places for their supporters of Pravda. For it was self-evident that only supporters of the mandate could be nominated as candidates. Opponents of the mandate, as champions of the mandate, only political bankrupts could go to such lengths. The liquidators did go even to such lengths, concealing their own views from the voters' delegates, pretending for the time being to be our people, who had no objection to the mandate that had been adopted, playing at unity and complaining that the anti-liquidators were splitters. They tried to soften the hearts of the non-factional voters' delegates and smuggle their men through somehow. And in fact, they did smuggle them through by deceiving the voters' delegates. It was evident that there would be no end to the trickery of the liquidators. It was no less evident that the political line of Pravda, and the line alone, enjoyed the sympathy of the St. Petersburg proletariat. That in conformity with the will of the voters' delegates, only a supporter of Pravda could be a Duma deputy, representing the workers. A bigger victory we could not have desired. Number 3. Two unities. Before coming to the election of the Duma, we must say a word or two about the unity, which played a fatal role during the election of the electors, and at which the liquidators are clutching like a drowning man at a straw. Trotsky recently wrote in Luch that Pravda was once for unity, but is now against it. Is that true? It is true and yet not true. It is true that Pravda was for unity. It is not true that it is now against unity. Pravda always calls for the unity of consistent workers' democracy. What is the point then? The point is that Pravda and Luch and Trotsky look at unity in totally different ways. Evidently, there are different kinds of unity. Pravda is of the opinion that only Bolsheviks and pro-party Mensheviks can be united into a single whole. Unity on the basis of disassociation from anti-party elements, from liquidators. Pravda has always stood and always will stand for such unity. Trotsky, however, looks at the matter differently. He jumbles everybody together, opponents of the party principle as well as its supporters. And of course, he gets no unity whatever. For 5 years, he has been conducting this childish propaganda in favor of uniting the ununitable. And what has he achieved is that we have 2 newspapers, 2 platforms, 2 conferences, and not a scrap of unity between workers' democracy and the liquidators. And while the Bolsheviks and the pro-party Mensheviks are uniting more and more into a single whole, the liquidators are digging a chasm between themselves and this whole. The practical experience of the movement confirms Pravda's plan of unity. The practical experience of the movement smashes Trotsky's childish plan of uniting the ununitable. More than that, from an advocate of fantastic unity, Trotsky is turning into an agent of the liquidators, doing what suits the liquidators. Trotsky has done all in his power to ensure that we should have two rival newspapers, two rival platforms, two conferences which repudiate each other. And now, this champion with fake muscles is singing us a song about unity. This is not unity. It is a game worthy of a comedian. And if this game enabled the liquidators to secure the election of 3 of their men as electors, it was only because it was impossible in the short period available to expose the unity comedians who concealed their flag from the workers. 4. The election of the Duma deputy. After that, it is not difficult to understand what kind of unity the liquidators talked about when they proposed to the supporters of Pravda the nomination of a joint candidate for the Duma. It was simply a proposal to vote for the liquidators' candidate, in spite of the will expressed by the voters' delegates, and in spite of the mandate of the St. Petersburg proletariat. What other answers could the supporters of Pravda give, except that the mandate of voters' delegates was sacred, and that only a supporter of the mandate could be elected as Duma deputy? Should they have gone against the will of the voters' delegates to please the spineless liquidators? Or should they have disregarded the latter's caprices for the sake of the mandate of the St. Petersburg proletariat? Luch is howling about Pravda's splitting tactics and is spreading fairy tales about the electors. But why did not the liquidators agree to draw lots among the 6 electors from the workers as recommended by Pravda? In the interest of the joint workers' candidate, we were ready to make even this concession. But why, we ask, did the liquidators reject the proposal to draw lots? Why did the supporters of Luch prefer 6 candidates for the Duma instead of 1? In the interest of unity, perhaps? Luch says Gudkov nominated the Pravda supporter Badiev as a candidate. But the liquidator newspaper modestly adds the proposal was rejected. But have the Luch liquidators forgotten that it was their supporter, Petrov, and not the Pravdaists, who refused to withdraw his candidature, and so by his action exposed the liquidators' urge for unity? And yet they call this unity. Perhaps the fact that Gutov and other supporters of Luch put up his candidate after Badiev, the supporter of Pravda, had already been elected, will also be claimed as unity. Who will believe it? Luch hypocritically advertises that political non-entity, Sudakov, who it alleges withdrew his candidate in the interest of unity. But does not Luch know that Sudakov simply could not go to the ballot because he had received only 2 nominations? What should we call a newspaper which dares to lie in full view of everybody? Is political spinelessness the only merit of the liquidators? The liquidators try to get their man into the Duma by the will of the cadets and the Octobrists, in opposition of the will of the St. Petersburg workers. But does not Luch, which is divorced from the masses of the workers, realize that the St. Petersburg workers would have expressed their lack of confidence in such a deputy? Pravda, number 151, October 24th, 1912, reprinted from the newspaper. Our boy, K Street. Our boy, Koba Street. Koba Streeting. JFK Rotting, welcome in, comrade. Great to see you. What do you think? What do you think, chat? Oh my god, it's raining. Pretty good Stalin reading today. No? You like Kosov you know the famous Marxist philosopher K Sit, not related to K Solon. Don't confuse him with K Solon. Completely different Georgian philosopher. Actually, I'm like looking at this one and it's actually really close. What do you think, chat? One more bonus. I'll do one more bonus one for you. This one is actually really short too, and then the next one is long. Lennon Smash, welcome in. I think we're actually going to do one last one. One last Stalin read. Because this one here, today is election day, is the last. I think it's like the last in this kind of group here. Perfect. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, we're going to read one more Stalin. I can hear you. Okay. One more Stalin read, everybody. And go follow JFK Rotting. Today is election day. This is a banger, actually. Today is election day in St. Petersburg. Elections in the Second Curia. The fight is between two camps. The Social Democrats, read Marxists, and the cadets. The voters must decide to whom they are going to entrust the fate of the country. What do the Social Democrats want? What do the cadets want? The Social Democrats, as representatives of the working class, are striving to liberate mankind from all exploitation. The cadets, however, as the representatives of the liberal bourgeoisie, build their future on the exploitation of man by man. The embellished exploitation, it is true, but exploitation for all that. The Social Democrats are of the opinion that the question of renovating the country has remained unsettled, that it must be settled, and settled by the efforts of the country itself. The cadets, however, believe that it is superfluous to talk about renovation because, thank God, we have a constitution. The Social Democrats are of the opinion that, on the road to renovation of the country, Russia has split into two Russias: old, official Russia, and the new, future Russia. The cadets, however, believe that after the granting of constitution, this contrasting of the two Russias is no longer possible because Russia is now one. The only deduction to be drawn is the constitutional ideal of the cadets has already been achieved. The framework of the June the 3rd regime is not irksome to them. For example, the following is what Milikov said in the Banquet of London in 1909, at which he represented Russia in conjunction with the Octoberist Guchkov and the moderate Black Hundred Bobrinsky. Quote, "You have before you men of very diverse shades of political opinion, but these differences, supplementing each other, represent our great ideal of a constitutional Russia." See Yevrov's book, Russia, People's Representatives, etc., page 81, unquote. Thus, the Black Hundred Bobrinsky, supplementing the Cadet Milkov in the interests of popular freedom. Such, it appears, is the great ideal of the cadets. Not a single representative of the workers, not a single representative of the peasants was present at the London banquet. But it appears the great ideals of the cadets can do without workers, can do without peasants. The constitution of the Brabrinskys, Guchkov, and Milyakovs, without representatives of the workers, without representatives of the peasants. Such are the ideals of the cadets. Is it surprising after this that the cadets in the Third Duma voted for 1. The anti-popular budget, 2. Indirect taxes, 3. Grants for the maintenance of prisons, etc.? Is it surprising, after this, that the cadets oppose the demands of the workers, of the peasants, and of the entire democracy? Is it surprising after this that the cadets, through the mouth of Malikov, demand more vigor, sternness, and severity towards the student movement, and in rec, contemptuously describe the peaceful strike of the Lena workers as a spontaneous riot? No, this is not a party of popular freedom, but a party of betrayers of popular freedom. Such people are only capable of striking a bargain with the bureaucracy behind the backs of the people. The negotiations with Witt, Stolypin, and Trepov, and now Sazonov, are by no means accidental. Such people are only capable of entering into an alliance with the Black Hundreds to defeat the Social Democrats in the elections in Kharkov, Kostroma, Yekaterinburg, and Riga. To entrust the fate of the country to such people would be tantamount to surrendering the country to the derision of the enemies. We express the conviction that self-respecting voters will not link their honor with the fate of the cadets. Let the cadets today bear well-merited punishment for the heinous sins they have committed against the Russian people. Worker voters, vote for those who represent your interests, for the Social Democrats. Shop assistant voters, don't vote for the cadets who ignored your interests as regards leisure time. Vote for the Social Democrats, the only consistent champions of your interests. Polish voters, you are striving for the right to free national development. Remember that freedom for nationalities is inconceivable without general freedom, and the cadets are betraying freedom. Jewish voters, you are striving for equal rights for Jews, but remember that Milkovs and who hobnob with Bobrinsky and the cadets who enter into a block with the rights will not strive for equal rights. For the betrayers of the popular freedom, or for its champions, for the cadets or the Social Democrats. Choose, citizens. Pravda number 152, October 25th, 1912. Reprinted from the newspaper. Signed, K. Street. There you go. That will be the last one, because then we're coming to a longer one here. There. What do you think? That's our Stalin reads today, y'all. Pretty good, I'm thinking. Maybe what I'll do now is let you all decide what video we watch before we do the headlines. Yeah. I'm gonna put up a poll and you can all decide what video you want before we do the Larry headlines, so I can have a little puff. When do we get to the part where ML's killed all the anarchists? It's very boring because that never actually happened. God, that chatter was really annoying in your chat. What the fuck was that about? Alright, so here's what you can choose from. Choose your adventure, and then after we do this video, we'll do the Larry headlines. So either we can watch Cuba Foreign Minister speak, or we got Radhika Desai on China got exactly what they wanted from Trump. Sort of like a follow-up from her conversation that she had with Michael Hudson. But this is with Mick Dunford and Radhika Desai talking about China got exactly what they wanted from Trump. We'll call it China Mog. China Mogged. Trump Mogged. China Trump Mogged. Yeah, there. Okay, choose your adventure. Do you want the Cuba FM Speaks? Or do you want Radhika China Trump Mogging? Vote now. Allow your voting to do the work, and while we do that, of course, since we just read Stalin, I feel like it's necessary to watch this clip. Like when Larry talks like one of the cool kids. I often do that. I am a pretty cool kid, JFK. This is tradition that we play this after reading Stalin, of course. Stalin shot my great-grandfather, sir. Stalin was a great man. He wouldn't have killed your grandpa without reason.
No.
He probably deserved it, right?
Stalin-მა ჩემი დიდი ბაბუა დახვრიტა ბატონო.
Stalin-ი დიდი ადამიანი იყო.
ხო.
უბრალოდ არ დახოცამდა შენ ბაბუას.
ნო. ის იქნებოდა, ხო? ხო.
Nazis.